welcome back to Here Now. We're discussing the sex educational curriculum that's going to be introduced in Ontario schools, in 2015 of September. And we have Sukhjot Naru, who has been on the show before the break, and we're now joined by new guest Baljit Bawa, who is a Liberal Party activist. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
We also have Nabil Hassan, and Nabil is the founder of Muslim Youth Scholarship Foundation for Peel Region Schools. Thanks for being here. And we are talking about the sex education curriculum that's being introduced in September. It was announced a few weeks ago. It seems that, according to polls, 49% of the public seem to approve of, Ontarians approve of the new curriculum, while 34% disapprove. So we have some opinions out there. It seems like those who disapprove seem to have the louder voice. We've seen the protests at Queen's Park. There have been different meetings that have been going on in different community groups. And so there seems to be concerns with this sex education curriculum. Maybe we'll start with Baljit, and maybe you can share what your thoughts are. It's been 17 years since the sex education curriculum was updated. So 17 years is a long time. A lot has changed in our world.
It is. And in this past 17 years, a lot has happened when it was introduced the first time when they had the curriculum amendments in 2010. When with the Premier McGuinty, it was opposed by some religious groups, and then it was taken down as being the most controversial. They said, okay, we are not going to discuss it, let's keep it for another day, and now it has come up again and again. And especially with those type of protests that happened in the past, but now all the political parties are actually in favor of getting this done, as there has been a lot of changes, not only from the curriculum perspective, but the content perspective. The content is very old. It's really outdated. There are a lot of new, especially with the technologies, with the other things that have come up, and the way how the education is being imparted to the kids or the students has taken a lot of reformation. And to include all those things, and especially the word like sexting, which we have been seeing that there's a lot of hue and cry about that why this word is being introduced. It's a fact that's accepted. Instead of facing the outcomes of it, which goes into the wrong side of emotional or physical, or in other words, the development of a child, right, from that particular stage where they get engaged into this. One of the schools, just to extend that here in Brampton, has started saying, bring your device and we will teach your kids to use the smart devices, whether it's an iPhone, iPad, and so on. It's on the pilot. So that means now we are giving our kids that at the grade 1 level by saying, okay, here you go. It's connected on the technology. It's connected to the world. Who knows what they are doing it? So if the kids are not being educated, they are not trained, they are not given those words, what exactly happens out there, and that same education is not provided to the parents, because it's not just the education curriculum change for the kids, it's for the parents also, because they get this particular curriculum, they see what is in it, and they go from there on. And one thing which I just want to make a little quick change, or when we say sex ed curriculum, it's not a sex ed curriculum. It's actually a health and physical education. It's not sex education. So let's change that word. Because if you see the whole curriculum, there is no word called sex ed in that. It's called health and physical education, in which there is a section which is called human development and sexual health. That's where they have mentioned a couple of those sexual contents, which are a little explicit. And I'm also not in favor of introducing those words, because they are very explicit words. They should not be introduced at the grade 1, grade 2, and so on. But having said that, still, the curriculum itself needed an overhaul. The overhaul is very much acceptable. There's a lot of things that are needed to actually have a good physical as well as a health from mental illness and from the other side, so that the kids can grow up with what exactly is happening around them.
Okay. Nabil, what are your thoughts on this?
So I would agree with Baljit on those points for sure. Actually, Charles Sousa had come to the Islam Masjid and he had presented with some of his policy.
The ISNA being the Islamic Society of North America.
North America, so it's on
Mississauga
QW and Erin Mills, Mississauga Mosque. And basically, a person had come from the Ministry of Education and they had mentioned that the sex education component is only 10% of the full curriculum. So what Kathleen Wynne had mentioned in that big thick book is only 10%. So I mean, I don't think that this conversation should just talk about the 10%. I think the majority of parents, if you look at the polls, when they look at that and they read that 243-page document, they're okay with it. They're okay with it, right? But when it comes to that sexual education, whatever you mentioned, component, I think that portion, to have my 6-year-old daughter come in and say, you know, Dad, I learned about the vulva and the vagina and the penis, that's okay. I think I'll have to get used to that. But in first grade, I find that that's okay. I'm okay with that. Then when they talk about, you know, aspects of masturbation and things like that, and transgender behavior, cross-dressing is fine, that's when I start really thinking about, one thing is sexual education, you know, the birds and bees sort of discussion we had a long time ago, that's fine. But the moment you start getting into that, you know, the queer, transgender, that sort of thing, that's when I started thinking, is this really necessary for a grade 3? Inappropriate touching, fine with all the issues we've had, that's even fine. But it's certain elements that I think, for parents that are completely fine with sexual education, it's certain elements that I think are, that some students, you know, parents have come up in arms, and I don't think this government is really listening to that. They're actually painting, if you look at the Ontario legislature, the parliament, sorry, they just paint you, okay, this is homophobic, or this is boring, or that's outdated, and you're talking about, you know, I don't think labeling parents whose children are being taught is the right way to go.
Okay.
Right? So I think there needs to be a little bit more sensitivity between this government and the parents whose children are being taught.
Okay, so, you know, according to the Premier, a lot of those, you know, her thoughts were that, you know, people who came out to protest weren't really just protesting the curriculum, but they were also, you know, a bit about, you know, it being driven by homophobia. Do you agree with that, maybe? Do you feel that, you know, people who were homophobic didn't want homophobic views being presented to children?
I think the government
or homosexual views?
If the government is, since the curriculum is changed in 19 years or 100 years or 200 or 1,000, 2,000, is there due way found how to make babies? You just tell us that. If you have discovered a new way of doing it, then tell us. Then why do you want in grade 3 brand what is natural as unnatural, and the other way around? What is going on here?
So let's not go to the extreme side of it, as you mentioned it, that no, this education, if you go through with those 244 pages, out of which the actual content is only 220 pages, and give and take, the actual content where they change the amendments is about 180 pages. That's where they have explained it, grade 1 to all the way to grade 8, and it's not all the way to grade 12, and especially with that making babies. That used to be there in grade, I guess grade
10.
4. No, it used to be in grade 4 with the egg forming and evolution and so on. They actually pushed that to one extra level. They pushed it one grade ahead of, one grade later. Then they had it, because they thought that no, that particular content or that matter is not actually for this grade. So there are changes, and don't only look from the changes that are like, you know, yes, we can make it dramatic, and then as you asked the question, is it homophobic? No, I don't see that. It's a fact now. Okay. And now if we say, especially with yours, as you mentioned, you know, should we accept it or not, or transgender and all those things? No, it's a law. Whether we accept it or not, that's our backgrounds, that is how our cultural histories or what the values we come with. But if we go with the actual, or what the law says, the education system has to follow moral as well as legal bindings. There is nowhere, now if the law is saying that we accept that differentiation of sexual orientation, I am no one to go against the law, and the kids should know this, because that creates a sense of discrimination.
Exactly.
That creates the environment of unease, that how do I use this word? How do I address a person? How do I identify somebody or my own self? What part of that particular spectrum I belong to?
I don't think Baljeet, I said that I'm going against the law, right? Homosexuality is out there, that's fine. All I'm saying is to introduce it to children from 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade onwards. I think that's too early. That's all. That's the point I'm making. Right?
Yeah, I can add something to that.
Please.
Well, I agree with what my friend Nabil is saying here. I mean, we're not opposing all these changes. The government is labeling us wrongly that we are opposing all this. We are not. What we are trying to say here, instead of putting this thing in grade 3, to let it come in grade 5. And in grade 3, there is no need to tell the kids that this is natural, this is unnatural, this is okay, this is okay. Don't impose your opinion on them. Don't impose your own agenda on those poor kids. Right?
I agree.
And let them take a break from this thing. Let them form their own opinions, and when they come to grade 5, these things can be taught to them. So this is what we are requesting the government, nothing more, nothing less.
And
So
I think
who decides? Sorry, not to.
I might actually have to cut you off too, since you cut it off. We're going to pause for a break. We're going to come back after the break and continue the conversation, so stay tuned.
An important reminder from Rogers. For cable customers whose TV is connected directly to their analog cable outlet, analog versions of select channels will continue to be phased out. Simply order a free digital adapter to continue to receive all of the TV channels you currently enjoy with improved digital sound and picture quality. Just connect the adapter to your cable outlet and TV. To order your free rental adapter, please call us today or visit rogers.com/digital adapter.
Rogers TV is your weekly companion to the 2015 Cricket World Cup.
We've got a good match in our hands, there's no doubt about that.
What a way to finish things off. Tune into Rogers Top Tier Cricket to get your fix of sixes, wickets, insights, and highlights, along with the latest updates on your favorite teams and players.
Oh, look at this, the white ball is disappearing in this Carnegie sky.
Join the conversation through social media and tune in Saturday live at 4 p.m. only on Rogers.
Well, there's double need.
This is Rudy Blair. I get to talk to all different genres. It doesn't matter if it's pop, rock, R&B, whatever.
Yeah.
So I get to speak to the biggest artists in their moment.
Do you do any activities, any sports? And how do you feel about that? I hate feeling sad too. Would you like to talk about it? And what makes you feel better? Oh, really? You like to knit? No, I do not like sardines.
Please welcome to the stage, Dr. Jean Clinton.
The opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers or Rogers TV.
Welcome back to Here Now, talking about the sex ed curriculum. And we're having a really good conversation during the commercial break, by the way, just so you know. But we're going to continue the conversation on screen. You know what? I have a little bit of a note from the Campaign Life Coalition in regards to the Catholic schools and how they're going to be affected. Because Catholic schools don't believe in premarital sex and condoms, and there's a lot of things that actually conflict and contradict what they teach, but the curriculum that's going to be introduced is going to be taught in not just the public schools, but also the Catholic schools. So there seems to be some concern on that front too. You know, so, but the Premier has made it clear that the Catholic school system, like the secular public school system, must implement this curriculum without exception. So how it's going to be done, how they're going to talk about birth control and abortion and all these issues that the Catholics disagree on, you know, will be an interesting challenge ahead. So it's not just the other religious groups, it's also, you know, Catholics and other people too. Do you feel that this is motivated by any cultural, like, you know, the disagreement to the sex ed curriculum? Do you think that there's some cultural reasons for people to resist this, or do you feel it's just more moral and ethical?
I think people actually think it is too much too soon.
Too much too soon.
Right, okay. And they are resisting that. They want their kids to enjoy themselves for a few more years. A couple of more years isn't going to do you harm anyone, but right? And the second thing is it's a communication gap from the government, as I said earlier also. The communication gap is from the government side. They haven't taken anyone on board. The consultation process was a sham, a total sham. The 4,000 parents who were consulted, well, look, a principal has asked one parent per school. That principal will select one who's in favor of that. Because they already got orders from the government, hey, we got to push this through, let us do it that way. Right? So it's already being set up. So why we are not a party to that. We don't want to be party to the decision of the government. I'm a liberal myself. Right? Okay. But I will not agree with what is going on here. Okay. I'm going to oppose it.
So,
but it seems to be like, you know, there is a 2 and there's a 4 and so on. It's not a 2 and a 4. But
and not everyone can be consulted. Yes. You've got a lot of people in Ontario,
so now it's not that, as Mr. Narus mentioned, that there was one parent who was picked up by the principal who the principal liked it and they gave it that, okay, here's the parent and they give the consent. No, it's actually every school has got a parent chair. The parent which is elected or selected or unanimously considered to be the representation of all the parents of that school, that's called the parent chair. So 4,000 schools in Ontario, 4,000 parent chairs, that means it's a part of that, means the whole community was reached. Now, the consensus came from those 4,000, not parents, but parent chairs. Let's make it very clear over here. So it was a consensus. They did go out, they did reach out there, and that was the consent only from the curriculum side, whether you would accept it or not. But behind that scenes, there are policymakers, there are subject matter experts, there are health, what they call the health specialists. This was referred to all those communities and experts and so on. And as Mr. Nabil very rightly mentioned, the sex ed is only 10% of the total curriculum. And we are just going on those few words which are being used. But if you read through that, and as I went through word by word, there is no mention of those words as such if the teacher does not want to. This curriculum actually has went one step ahead, which was not there in 1998. Previously, it was on the teacher's discretion how they want to explain or they want to say, okay, you know what does this mean? So it was the teacher's description or their discretion. But now, they made it very clear in this with the phrase that what teacher should use and how the student should respond. And teacher and student, they both can actually consult each other based on that, and they can actually read in this thing. The words which are very objectionable, as we have seen it, like the penis, oral sex, and the vagina and all this stuff, it's only mentioned once over there, and that is as an example, that if the teacher wants to ask something, okay, you know what part of your body was touched by someone when it is called the inappropriate touching, and when they said consent, it's not a consent to have sex, it is consent to touch. These are the very simple terms that we need to really understand, and that need to consent or the consent to touch or consent for anything is not consent to sex. And when you're saying, okay, if a student or if a kid who is like a 1 year, 2 year, or like in the grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, anything between the age 5 to 9, we consider that's the age that they are actually getting impacted, and we as parents. And if my kid was there, definitely I would have made that particular big voice against it. Yes, those kids should not be taught those words or those activities, but they should be definitely told that if you are touched inappropriately and you don't like it, a consent is a consent which is said explicitly. You say no, that means it's a no. Not giving a consent does not mean yes. And this is what is very explicitly mentioned in this one, that if you're not saying anything, it's not a consent, which usually in most of our cultural backgrounds, we consider that. Somebody says,
and I think even forgetting their cultural background, you can leave the cultural aspects aside. If we're just talking raw aspects of all of this, I think even on this language that we're using, consent, I'd like to actually see how a teacher, it would have been very nice if there was a teacher here who actually teaches in the public system, how they would actually broach the subject with a second or even 3rd-year-old. I mean, a child knows inappropriate touching. You don't have to get all legalistic on the child and say, oh, this is consent, and this is not consent, and this is, that, and I think this, it's loaded
I'm actually going to
conversations.
disagree, because I think there are children that don't understand what is appropriate and what is inappropriate, and that's the reason why we have a lot of situations of abuse, because people who are the closest to them, whether they're aunts or uncles or parents, and inappropriate touching happens, and the child cannot discern between what is not appropriate and what is appropriate because of the relationships that exist. I think there is a lot of abuse out there, and for us to turn a blind eye and say that it doesn't exist, it does exist. And when you hear a teacher talking about it, I think some of a child might be able to, and it's real, it happens. We cannot say it doesn't happen. We might want to put a blind eye, a blindfold and say it doesn't happen, but it does happen. And I don't want to.
Even the stats.
I think that when children are presented with this is appropriate, this is inappropriate, and they get that from an outside perspective, I think it helps them. I think the underlying goal is really protection of our children.
For sure. So
right?
sexting, cyberbullying, all of these things since 1998, they've evolved, right? So I agree with all of that, for sure. But my only small sliver of point in all of this big 243-page document is simply the language that is being used. I think it's a little bit too not age appropriate for the kids that are there. I don't think so. Fine, we have girls coming to puberty in 8, 9, 10 years of age, as the Premier mentioned. Agreed. That's fine. And I have no issue with, and I think many parents don't, in identifying body parts and all of that. The moment you get into oral sex and masturbation and things, I think that kind of just pushes us to the side. The other thing is, the point I'd like to make is, when we contacted our school board trustees, so if this was a consultative process, as you're saying, Baljeet, why was it when we many people contacted the school board trustees, can you tell us a bit about the curriculum, what's happening? They all said, and this is across the GTA, at least where I'm active, we don't know. We have nothing. Well, we went to the teachers. Do you know anything about this? Is there any, some sort of job aids, anything that you've got? We have nothing. We went to the Ministry of Education website. They had nothing. So it was brought in, and then when we had meetings with our MP, we were told that it's going to be there in September, come hell or high water. And you can have some consultation process, but for the most part, the curriculum is there. And I think that method of pushing it down parents' throats, I think that's what causes people to be up in arms. Right?
Just to speak a little bit more. So I'm thinking homosexuality in grade 3. The reality is there are parents that, there are kids with, same-gendered parents. I'm just thinking, as a grade 3 child, would you not know, or would it not be discussed? It's a certain occasion coming up, and both my moms are coming or both my dads are coming to the school to pick me up. I think the awareness is there, and I think the world that we live in today is different from what it was 17, 20 years ago, where it wasn't so common. Today it's more of a commonplace. So I feel like it might be more of an education, just to let children know that, there are parents out there that are same-gendered. I don't know if it's really, I've heard people saying, they're just ramming this homosexuality down my throats. I don't think it's really that. I think it's just creating this awareness. Do you disagree?
Yeah, I do.
I know you do. I know you do. I know. I think, parents don't want their children to know what exists out there.
It's not about the parents.
See, right now we live in a society where you have single parents, you have mothers, only fathers, only two fathers, two mothers, and our kids, they go in the same class where those parents, they come and they come to know, oh, I live with a male and a female parent, and whereas your parents are two females, or your parents are two males, or how come you only have a mother, or how come you only have a father, and so on. Now, all those explanations or giving the actual definitions to it's more of creating awareness where they have the sense of non-discrimination, what I call it, and there's an inclusion. So they have understanding of what's going on around, and it more becomes an acceptable.
Thank you. We're going to come back after the break and close up. Stay tuned. back. I'm here now. We're talking about the sex education curriculum. As I told you before, even our conversations are pretty heated even during the commercial breaks. But glad to have Sukhjot Nahru, Baljit Bawa, and Nabil Hassan on the show. Before the show, we had Michael Joby and Anila Jadunandin, and a great panel of speakers, a great conversation. We tried to be balanced in presenting the pro view, the con view, and sort of in the middle view. So hopefully you have a balanced perspective on all sides. We're just going to close up with what are your thoughts on how we should go forward, and any closing remarks that you might have.
Well, the way forward is to be flexible, indicate that the government is flexible, and talk to the people, try to explain them the situation. This is what it is. Explain the curriculum, reach out to them, take their feelings onto account, and if there are some changes to be made, make them. And there's no point in justifying, here and there, well, you're against this, you're against. No one is not against anything. We are not against the law, right? We don't want our kids in grade 3 to be told, hey, this is appropriate behavior, when we know that it is not. Let us approach that subject in grade 5. What is the hurry? Why do we want to, these are impressionable minds, small kids we are talking about, why do we want to impose our own opinion on these kids?
Okay.
Right? So that they're comfortable, hey, that guy is okay, that girl is okay, I'm okay, and they start discovering, hey, this is okay, mom, I'm like this only, right? These are kids, they don't have opinions of their own. For heaven's sake, let us give them a break and let them enjoy a couple more years.
Okay, so thank you very much, Sukhjot. Baljit, what are your thoughts?
So I do understand, and everybody knows it, that our rights are being protected by Charter of Rights and Freedom, as well as the human rights law and so on. But right now, especially with this health and physical education curriculum that's being introduced, and especially that part of it, what my thoughts or what I would like to have the government to do is engage, and I won't say subject matter experts because that's what they have done it. I would like to have one of these two organizations or people review this thing and approve it. Either it should be the Ombudsman or the Crown Corporation. They should take care of this, pick it up, review it, and approve it before it goes in September to the schools. If the government is ready to do it, I can feel assured that yes, it has got all the content and I accept it. But if they are not going through that, then those content which are objectionable, especially at grade 1 with all those words, the sexually explicit words, grade 3 where they have mentioned those sexual activities, and something in the grade 5 and grade 6, they should be taken off completely. That's the only way to accept it. Otherwise, as in entirety of this curriculum, no, it's not acceptable.
Okay. Nabil.
Oh, it's not acceptable. Okay, well that's a bit of a difference. I'm surprised there.
Not to its entirety.
To its entirety.
With amendments. So agree, but with amendments.
We've got that. I think all three of us are agreeing on that. I agree with Mr. Baljit and Sukhjot, what you guys have mentioned. And I think if the government can hopefully listen to that. I don't know about the Ombudsman. I think there needs to be a bit more of consultation with parents, but I don't think this government's going to do that because they're bent on having this introduced in September. What I would probably suggest for parents is work with your school boards, your trustees, and focus on how will this be imparted to your children.
Excellent.
And I think that's what needs to be done.
So everyone needs to play a role. Well, thank you so much for being great panel guests. Thank you very much for watching. We'll be back on again next week with another great topic. Till then, have a great week. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much.